Welcome to the Daily Coffee Pro by Mapper Forward, friends. Today on the podcast, let's talk about cultural palate. Cultural palate is the idea, well, it's not an idea, it's a real thing. Cultural palate is when different communities, different cultures have a different palate for something. So, for example, I can speak to this firsthand with regards to the different cultural palate between the coffee consuming community here in Australia and the coffee consuming community in the United States. And even in the United States and in Australia, the different areas. So Sydney and Melbourne have two different cultural palettes. California and New York have two different cultural palettes. And these stem from a lot of different things. So for example, to bring it down to super basics that are easily relatable. A strawberry in Thailand tastes very different to a strawberry in California, which tastes very different from a strawberry that's produced here in different regions of agricultural New South Wales, the state that I live in Australia currently. Those three different perspectives on what a strawberry tastes like will influence the way that you taste the flavor profile of a strawberry in coffee. Now that's one very small but very significant example of why cultural palate is a thing. Also, we can talk about cultural palate in the way of what different cultures prefer. Now, this used to really piss me off when I was in my very early days when I'd worked in America as a barista. And Australians would come in, and I love my fellow Australians. I love how impassioned Australians are about coffee and our coffee culture. It's always very exciting to see a passionate coffee drinker anywhere in the world. Australians just take it a little too far sometimes and like to make the point that they are an Australian coffee drinker. And so when they would come into a cafe that I was working at in America and they would make it known how great it was to come across an Australian barista who knew how to make coffee. Now the issue with that is a couple of things. One, usually they weren't baristas. Second of all, they're coming to another culture to experience the coffee from the culture that they'd left behind, either in Melbourne or in Sydney or wherever they were from in Australia. For an Australian to come up to you in California and say, "Oh, thank God, someone who knows how to make coffee. I've missed Australian coffee so much." What they're saying to me is they're not going to be open to whatever it is that I'm serving them. Now, roasters in America and the specific roasters that I may have been working for may have a different culture, and they do have a different cultural palate to the roasters in Australia. They may be roasting to a specific profile, dark, super light, medium, whatever, that doesn't align with the cultural palate of what that customer is particularly used to in America. So if you go to another example, if you go to Italy to taste pizza that tastes the same way it tastes in New York, and you're disappointed that pizza tastes different in Italy than the way it tastes in New York, you're not looking to experience that from their cultural palate perspective. You're looking at tasting that pizza from your own cultural palate perspective. This is a real problem in our industry because we go drink coffee around the world and we expect it all to taste the same. You're bringing your own cultural palate to an experience, and if you're not opening your mind and you're not able to receive what you're being served and decide whether you like it or not. Again, taste is subjective. So if you don't like it, it doesn't mean that it's good or bad or any of the kinds of things it could be. It's just something you don't like. And the reason for that could be that the cultural palette of the people who are in the value chain creating that product have a different perspective, a different cultural palette to you. And that's okay. Have the experience for what it is. That's why we travel, to have different experiences. I invite you to consider, when you're ordering coffee from different countries and having it shipped to you, or whether you're going and experience coffee in different regions of the same country that you're in, or other countries once the world opens back up, that you approach it with the perspective of, I'm here to experience coffee from this culture's cultural perspective in their palate. We should be having fun with this. Peace, love, and peanut butter, friends. Have an amazing rest of your day.